interested in watching, cool. Alrighty. Well, welcome to this is my second run of a Playstorm today. Today we're this session we are our theme is Magical Academy, which is heavily inspired by Harry Potter, but also other cool academies like I think of like Xavier's School for Gifted Youth from X-Men, and Foster's Home for Imaginary Kids could possibly fit in there too. Just these institutions that are built up to help kids with extraordinary powers learn to control them, right?
Yeah.
That's the setting. So I have a little agenda here that I've prepared to help us stay organized and also on the same page. So I'm going to share that link with you real quick, Diana.
Okay.
But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I go by Diana Moon online. I can be found on Twitch and YouTube as XDynaMoonX or on Twitter as Diana Moon. I have been recently doing a lot more RPGs lately, the past year, but I've done a couple of RPGs since I was in high school, and I'm Latina, queer, in my mid-30s, so that there are older RPG people and there are women of color who like to play RPGs. And even create RPGs, which is exciting. And I've been, Harry Potter was one of my, well, X-Men was one of my major fandoms, but that was before internet was a thing. Harry Potter was the main internet fandom that got me into like everything. So I have a great love of it, and also because when you love something, you love to criticize it. There's a lot to criticize in Harry Potter, and I do like, just like magical fantasy themes and yeah, X-Men. Don't ask me about what I think of the X-Men movies.
Uh-oh, we'll be here all day.
Yeah.
We'll get to Playstorm tomorrow. We got to talk about X-Men today.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you are familiar with Harry Potter because that would have made my icebreaker question a little bit more involved, which is, which house would the Sorting Hat place you in, Diana?
Well, I officially haven't done the actual one. I've always been, like, wishy-washy. I found one very like, it was a 100-question test online that wasn't, like, because most quizzes, personality quizzes, or even Sorting Hats, it's obvious, like, this answer is a Gryffindor answer, and this answer is a Slytherin answer, and this one was, like, more, like, varied, and it pretty much made me, like, Hufflepuff with only a couple of percentages of Ravenclaw below, so I call myself a Huffleclaw.
Very cool.
So, yeah, because I think most people would want to be technically Gryffindor because that's who we got to learn
Mm,
and everything, but there are, like, as we didn't get to really we didn't get to learn more about the Hufflepuffs or the, Ravenclaws too much. So,
right.
is that like, you wanna be the good guy and we're told the good guy is Gryffindor.
I
Even
mean, they
though
got
I
all the
don't.
points, so.
Yeah. But I do have, it seems to work out as Hufflepuff because a lot of my friends are Slytherins, and apparently that's supposed to be a good, like, friendship mix is Slytherins and Hufflepuffs.
Hmm.
When you don't wanna have that antagonistic thing going on.
Wow. Well, my name is Michael Barford. I'm on Twitter at Michael G. Barford, and I didn't even go so far as to do a test. So I didn't get any questions like, well, how do you feel about snakes? Like, okay. I just looked up the Wikipedia article to refresh myself. And based on their descriptions of the houses, I think I would fall more into the Ravenclaw side of things. Definitely not Slytherin. But like you said, they're not like they don't get a lot of screen time, so it's hard to maybe know exactly what their whole deal is. But in the interest of fairness, I'll be a Ravenpuff, so
Nice.
we'll be well covered here. Very cool. And I am a straight cisgendered white guy, 25. So like, is it a surprise that I'm making games to you all? Probably not, but I like them too. And I'm very excited to team up with you, Diana, to work together to try to make a cool game today.
Yes, I
Uh,
am excited.
Glad to hear it. So, I want to talk a little bit about this idea of playstorming. I think it's something that has kind of been established before, maybe with a slightly different definition. So, I've seen it used before where somebody comes to the table with like just a nugget of game design that they're excited about working on, but haven't really fleshed out to the point where they're ready to necessarily play test,
Hmm.
but they still want some collaboration and help on working that out. And so it's sort of like a more dynamic form of playtesting where larger sections are more apt to change or
Right.
written. But I have brought zero to the table today. And the idea is just this is a theme that we're both excited about and interested in. And we can kind of talk about the sort of game we'd like to see from it. So that's the basic idea. So it's a little bit different from brainstorming, though, just like thinking about what kind of game that you and I might like. But we're hopefully going to try to discover that through play.
Right.
So ideally, we'll be playing this game, and we'll get to a point where we're like, this part should be like a game beyond just role playing.
Hmm.
What should that look like? And we'll have a little discussion there. So one shorthand that I kind of used for this for last session was collaborative Calvin ball. If you're familiar with this concept, right?
I've heard of Calvin Ball before, and I think it was explained to me once, but I honestly don't remember anymore.
It's like you have two kids with a ball and they make up the rules as they go. Like, oh, that light pole is first base. Well, but you have to be standing on one leg when you touch first base, otherwise you're out or whatever, right?
Right.
So you make up the rules as you go along. That's kind of the idea.
Okay.
I also want to make a quick note on ownership when it comes to this, because like we're kind of like designing this game here, and maybe by the end we'll have the bones of something interesting. Either one of us could go and turn that into something. Neither of us really have ownership over the ideas that we're making today. So if you go and make the next big Harry Potter RPG and you go sell it, I'm not going to sue you. It would be polite if you know, like mention my name or something in the credits, but
Right.
otherwise, so ownership is like not really on the table there as far as that goes. Right. Okay, so that's the basic concept. So far, how's that sounding for you, Diana?
Pretty good. Yeah. Pretty
Okay,
easy to understand so far.
cool. Second step here is aim. So we're kind of looking to talk about what we're hoping to accomplish today with this session itself. By the end of this exercise, I don't think we're going to have a complete game, but we will probably have the bones of an interesting game, right?
Yeah.
But also like a fun story to tell about it, at the very least. We'll be taking a 15-minute break at an hour and 45 minutes in.
Okay.
So that's, we're going to definitely call that out. And then my plan is to have a hard end time at 3:45 or 3 hours 45 minutes in. That way, if anybody has a game in the next slot, they have time to get up and stretch their legs, right?
Nice. Yeah.
So,
Definitely. Movement when you're doing RPGs all day is really good.
yes. Yes. I wish I had one of those cool, like, electronic balancing
Yeah.
desks.
It would just
Uh,
take too much work to disassemble the desk I have. Like,
and my desk has a tendency to slowly accumulate crap.
oh
So,
yeah.
uh, maybe when I win the lottery. I gotta buy a ticket first, though. Cool. And when it comes to breaks, like whenever you feel like you need a break, call it out at the time or say
Okay.
like, hey, in 5 minutes, can we take a break? Something like that. I might do the same. Especially since we're doing one-on-one, I find that breaks help a lot
Mhm.
with that because you're
It's a
on.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Intense. Yeah.
Uh, okay, cool. So the last two parts that we're going to cover are going to be tone and subject matter. So this normally when I am GMing a game and I'm talking about this, I already have a set tone in mind and I already know what kind of subject matter is going to come up. But since we're creating something together collaboratively, there's a wide range of tones that we could explore with this kind of game. So I'm kind of wondering, what sort of tone you would like to hit with this game session and kind of this game.
Mhm.
Um, and also like what level of subject matter you would like to see.
Right. I've been kind of like with like everything in the world going on, kind of like in the mood for something that's a little bit more darker,
Mm,
but not necessarily like grim dark or like it's gonna end badly kind of thing. Like with a bit of like a bit or a lot of hopefulness, but not like bubblegum, kind of
yeah,
um and so yeah, something along the lines where there's like an underlying like maybe seriousness, but it is a magical academy, you know, it's teenagers and
right.
cats apparently.
And cats. Oh yeah, they'll be around.
Oh yeah. So there's a lot of like fun stuff that could still happen in that, but like
Yeah.
because I think with Harry Potter they kinda just glossed over, like, there was a lot and it's what drew me into Harry Potter in the beginning was there was a lot of darkness that they were hinting at, and then it just never, really pulled off until, like, at the end, JK was like, "Oh, I gotta end this somehow and have it," like, and all of this, like, simulated drama that happened in, like, the span of a year that didn't feel like it worked and everything. And whereas X-Men has always been an allegory for like, for all the political stuff, for racism, queerness, and all that. And so in the comics and the cartoons, there didn't seem to be too much levity. Like there was one or two, like I remember one issue was all about a poker game, but there was an underlying like Gambit had like dark thoughts, even though it was just all about poker game and like, bonding and stuff.
Right.
So, like, I guess, like, a mix where it's a little bit closer to, like, the, like, happy thing, but not just, like, straight up magical girl kinda bubbly, friendship is magic.
Sure.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, because when I think of a magical academy in Harry Potter too, right? Like it starts out a little bit lighter, and then it kind of grows up along with the generation who's reading
Right.
it, right? But a magical academy could be like a place that you go that's separate from the whole world, that's only filled with wonder and amazement and maybe teenage drama. But
Mhm.
we're wanting something that's less isolated and more grounded in like the reality of the world around you.
Yeah. Like, there's still obvious it's an academy, so there is gonna be some separation from, like, the rest of the world, but not as much, I would
Sure.
think, yeah.
Very cool. Um, so like when we talk about um, the subject matter here, and we're thinking teens, right? These are
Mm.
maybe more like high schoolers going to this academy side of a thing
Yeah.
instead of like grade
Going
school,
from the
middle
whole
schoolers.
range that, yeah, Harry Potter did.
Cool.
Mhm.
So along with teens in a boarding school, there's going to be some subject matter that could be involved there. Um, Shorthand, we could say PG-13,
Mm.
but we could also you know go into a bit more depth. So I think safety tools is a good way to kind of frame that discussion up. So three we're going to be using today. We have the X card, which you're not familiar with, is anytime you come up with any sort of content in the game that you find uncomfortable in an unfun way, because sometimes there's an uncomfortable situation,
Yeah,
but that's part of the fun. But if
yeah.
it's taking you out of the fun, we're going to want to X that. So you can either type an X in the chat, you can say it out loud, you can put your hands up in an X, any way that works for you. We're going to take a break. We're going to cut that content out and find an alternative to go forward, right?
Mhm.
And this is something that we can't argue against, I can't say, oh, do you really have to X that? I can't criticize you for that or anything like that. And we do that as a way to express like trust in each other, that we're going to respect each other as human beings before just storytellers,
Right.
that our well-being is more important than the story that we're making up, right? So that's on the table. But I also want to be able to signpost some things ahead of time that we
Okay.
just don't want to be part of the story. And we do that in two ways, with lines and veils. So a line is something that you just don't want uh, covered in the story at all, or
Mhm.
in this game, especially this session, right? And a veil is something that you're okay with happening, but you don't want it to be on screen, so to speak. So we don't want any graphic descriptions of it, right?
Right.
So sex between these teenagers, if that happens, I at the very least want to put that behind a veil,
Yeah, I agree. Like,
right?
yeah.
We fade to black, we see the door close, something
Mhm.
along those lines. But anything I list as a veil, if you'd rather that be a line, we can push it down the line. If you just don't want sexual activity or romance with these teenagers being a part of today's session or this game,
Mhm.
you can call that out, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm putting consensual sex in a veil. And I'm going to put non-consensual sex and abuse, violence on a line. I'm just not interested in dealing with that subject matter today.
Agree, yeah. In certain like with if you had a bunch of people that you knew really well, those would be interesting to play, especially in a magic setting. But yeah,
Yeah.
for like a one-off session or just starting up, that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
definitely something that teenagers deal with, So,
yeah.
um, but today I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Um, I can't think other than because that's a really good one and that staves off a lot. I can't really think of anything of specifically. Um,
How are you feeling about harm, physical harm to these kids?
um, As long as it's not, like, super graphic, like, if they do a potion and they lose their arm, we could just say that. We don't have to be like, like, it's eroding off kinda, like,
Right.
kinda thing. But yeah, like, harm, it's magic, and if depending on what tension we set to the story, it makes sense?
Cool.
So, um,
So maybe put a veil on that one.
yeah, I think a veil would be good for that. And I'm fine with romance. I would just I would put a line of romance with, um, teacher student,
Yeah.
which was very popular in Harry Potter fandom.
Well, yeah.
I was more of the teacher or student, like, kinda thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
That's a little too touchy for me to handle today. So
yeah.
we'll keep that sort of intrigue for another day. Cool. Awesome. So that covers our like subject matter, and I think that kind of informs our tone a little bit as well. And
Mhm.
again, if anything comes up that either of us is uncomfortable with, we can just exit, right,
Okay.
and and,
Yeah.
and find a way forward. Cool. Uh, so that's pretty much what I have for the CATS procedure. Um, I'm feeling like we're kind of getting on the same page about what this might look like. So, uh, one additional thing that I want to incorporate here is a way for us to kind of share the load of this exercise,
Mhm.
is handing out roles. Well, choosing roles. So I have kind of five that I think are useful to have. Maybe some are more important than others. Uh,
Mhm.
but I'll go ahead and just kind of like say those so that we put them out on the table. First one is the director. So this is someone who is moving the spotlight around, moderating the discussion, and taking on the GM role if necessary.
Mhm.
We may decide that this game is GM-less or GM full or has a GM. But either way, the director would take on that role. Then we have the writer. This is someone who's going to be taking notes on the game as we go along and recording the participants' names and stuff like that. Um, Then we have the researcher. This person is the official Googler, basically. Or if you have a, if you come up in a moment in a game and you're like, man, this reminds me of this move from this one game, or this rule from this other game, and
Mhm.
that person can go and look that up, and we won't have to be distracted. And then we have the producer. This is someone who is managing debrief and doing check-ins. And again, just because one person's the producer doesn't mean that nobody else has to check in or whatever. They're
Right.
just kind of in charge. And then finally, the prop master. I don't know why I gave all of these a theatrical theme. It just ended up doing that. But the prop master is managing online tools for if we need to roll dice or draw cards or something like that. This is somebody who's dealing with the technical side of things. So last round of Playstorming, we had 3 people, myself included. So we kind of split these roles up, doubled up on them.
Mhm.
But there's only 2 of us. So the way I plan on doing it, since I'm hosting the event and since I'm facilitating, I'll pick last. So
Okay.
ideally, that means I'll get the least desirable roles.
Right.
But do you think there's 1 or 2 of these which you could kind of juggle?
Yeah, I think I could be the researcher and I have pretty good Googling skills. And if it's at least pop culture reference, I'm pretty good at remembering RPG stuff since I'm kind of new-ish to trying different RPGs and stuff. I'm not as good as some of my friends who are like, "Oh yeah, that reminds me of that," you know?
Yeah.
So that would be great. And I guess, either, producer or prop master. I do know, I haven't used Roll for Your Party too much, just a little bit, but I've used, obviously Roll20. There's a there's, cardparty.io, I think, which it was good for those game RPGs that, just used deck of cards and everything,
Mm,
and that was pretty interesting. Um, so yeah, though I haven't GM'd in a decade, so that's the one thing I don't want to do, at least right now with a new s- concept kind of
right.
thing. So that would be the only reason I wouldn't want to do that, and I don't think I could both research and write.
Yeah. We only have one brain, so
Yeah.
cool. So if you're cool with being Googler and prop master, I will pick up this director role, and I'll take some notes, and I'll also head up that debrief at the end
Okay.
and ask some questions. Cool. Okay, let me figure out my tabs here then.
Yeah, I was figuring how am I gonna do I've never used this version of Hangouts before,
Oh,
so I'm
okay.
pinned pop-up window is not exactly gonna work this time.
Yeah, what do you normally use to stream? You use OBS or something cool like that?
Yeah, I use OBS, and then for, the Sunday game, which is streamed on Twitch, it's just, regular Google Hangouts,
Mhm.
and, uh, yeah, for both of those games. We might be trying, Discord soon, and I hear Zoom is really good, but that someone has to pay for it at least.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I like so for Gauntlet Hangouts, I like using Google Hangouts just because you don't need to download software or learn how to do that business, so it's
Mhm.
really accessible for new people to come and join. But I tried OBS the other day. I downloaded it. I'm like, oh, I still don't know how this
It
is
is
working.
for a lot of people, OBS is very complicated. It's very daunting to look at. I remember looking at a bunch of different tutorials, and then I was able to pick it up at least to get the basics. A
Mm.
lot of people recommend for a free program. Streamlabs now has its own version of OBS, and everyone
Mm.
shorthands it to slobs. So and that one, they're very user friendly. They have integrated overlays, so you don't have to make your own graphics if you don't want to, and it's pretty good. Gonna be testing that out, but for one of the things that I do, it regular OBS seemed to have handled the upload speed better. But yeah,
Mm.
but yeah, for another free one that's a little bit more user friendly, I would recommend checking out Streamlabs OBS. But yeah,
It's
regular OBS can be good, but it is very daunting at the beginning.
yeah. I'll definitely check out Streamlabs or Slobs. That sounds right up my alley. So thanks for that tip.
No problem, yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I think what I would like to do. I found that when we kind of went straight to character creation, it was good because it got us more geared towards play. But I think that doing a little bit of world building will help ground us in kind of like what's going on around us, right?
Right.
So some things I think about are like technology level. Is magic a secret thing? Is magic a feared thing? Things along those lines. And just because I think we may make a game and our story may be geared towards one vector,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean that we couldn't go and take these rules and go a totally different direction. So
Right.
um, what we define as the world here doesn't necessarily define the world of the game, but I think it'll be helpful if we think of it that way, right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Cool. Um, so yeah, let's figure that out a little bit. You mentioned contemporary might be a more useful period. What do you think? Like, do
Yeah,
we
like
want cell phones?
I was thinking either maybe contemporary or slightly future, so we can have a little bit more high tech. Because I don't think I've seen very many other than like something like similar to Shadowrun, where it's more cyberpunk and then a dose of magic, where this would be more about the magic with like the dose of like the future technology,
Mm.
um, kind of thing. And maybe I don't think I think it'd be more cool if magic's been known for a while, so then that way it integrates a little bit better. Cause like, in Harry Potter, magic and technology, they kept breaking each other, and even in the Harry Dresden series, if you're a high level magic person, you were crap against electronics, and that's not fun, really.
About Shadowrun too is like you can't have both.
Yeah, yeah, I
Why
forgot.
not?
So
Okay,
it'd be cool if there was something that was like maybe it's not 100% compatible, but like, yeah,
sure. I mean, and that's something too. I think that like teenagers and kids are just really suited to technology, right?
yeah.
So if they are a wizard, Harry, that doesn't mean that they're not going to be using technology. So near future technology um, that is compatible with magic in some ways,
Yeah.
and we're thinking magic is like not a secret hidden thing that the world at large doesn't know about, or it is. What do you think?
Um, that's where I'm like unsure about. Like, there's plenty that there's plenty of stories that are like where it's always hidden. Like, the Magicians trilogy and TV series, it's extremely hidden, and obviously Harry Potter, it's hidden, and um, Narnia, it's hidden. I don't like remember very many like
It's
other than
commonplace type things.
yeah, usually it's medieval fantasy D&D type where it's commonplace that there's magic, but I've never seen one that's like modern as a game that is or
Yeah,
and there's some books, but not very many that like deal with it as a normal part of the world
right.
that I can at least remember.
Is that something you think you'd like to explore
Yeah,
today?
that would be kinda interesting where it's like maybe obviously, like, the Muggles don't understand everything, but, like, it's there.
Oh, okay. So maybe still not everyone has access to magic.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. Not everyone can use magic. It's not an uncommon sight, right?
right.
Cool. Um, Let me see here then. So thinking about X-Men, right?
Mhm.
magic is not necessarily uncommon, just like mutations aren't necessarily uncommon. But do you think that they're feared in the same way? Is that like an element of our story that we want to include, that people fear these teenagers for their magic powers?
Mm, I'm not sure. Like,
Because I think that kind of changes the academy in a way,
mhm,
right? Like if people fear it could almost become like a prison in a
right,
sense, right?
yeah. And it kind of reminds me of of Deadpool 2 movie where where the kid was sent to this very high end prison and it just happens to be like a lot of people who were mutants kind of
Right.
thing. Um I don't know if I want it to be a fear, or at least like in the sense of like the X-Men were feared kind of thing.
Yeah. And we're talking about like maybe addressing some of these real world problems that are going on right now, right?
Mhm.
So I'm thinking about like the police, right?
Mm.
Do the police have a special magical crimes division? Or is it like some detectives are magicians and, they're just part of the team?
Right, yeah. Maybe um to bring it back to real world stuff like with America where there's this seemingly sudden like belief that um that white culture is being snuffed out.
Oh
So maybe
no,
there's
my
like it
cat
was
is.
yeah. So maybe it's like because more and more people are having the ability to have magic than before and they're more visible, there's like that whole like, oh, regular people are being so it's not that they've been constantly feared, but it's starting like people are starting to like wonder and worry.
Mm,
And things that seem to be okay, like having magical detectives, and now they're like, "Oh, well, we don't know if we want you on all the cases anymore," kind of thing. Or
right. So that
what
that particular aspect of X-Men where there's like one or two villains who are worried that mutants are going to replace or
yeah,
make humans extinct, right?
right. Or like people were like, "Well, why can't muggles go to this magic academy? Like, why are you oppressing us from?" It's like kind of
Right.
thing. So like maybe something like that. So it's not like where it's completely feared, but there's a starting to grow like vocal minority that's starting to get a little bit more worried.
Right. And for some reason, they're feeling empowered to speak up. So
Right.
maybe recently there was some event that happened that, is causing people to be concerned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um
And we're thinking that the amount of people who can use magic is a smaller number. It's a minority themselves.
yeah, maybe and it was that way for like couple hundred years or a couple decades, then it seems like the minority is growing to be more than just maybe close to equal but not exactly like half. Like the whole joke of a taco truck in every corner, like that's not necessarily a bad thing,
Right.
you know, because people like it.
But what about my waffle trucks?
We can have waffle trucks. I love waffles.
And yeah, and then the idea too that like, well, maybe these people who we've been calling minorities, like, if we look at the numbers, like, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, like maybe more studies have come out, and it's like, oh, they're not as, you know, as
Yeah,
token as we thought, or
and as easy to control or oppress, right?
yeah,
But they're not. So here's what I have so far as the breakdown, right? In our setting, we have near future technology that is compatible with magic in some ways. Not everyone can use magic, but it's not an uncommon sight. Those with the gift are in the minority, but their numbers are growing.
yes,
And then my next sentence would be like, those without magical abilities are starting to be afraid.
yes, yeah. I think that works.
Cool. I feel like that's a good kind of, uh, vibe to start off with, right? So those who lack uh, okay. So let's talk about our school. Um, I think it'd be great to put a name to it right away, and then we can just refer to it by name as we go along instead of having it be some diaphanous thing.
That is a good word.
I think I just watched um, the Turnaround Bright Eyes music video or
Oh,
whatever. A very diaphanous video. Um, so any like magical academy names coming to your head
um,
right off the bat?
I was thinking with something with like a Spanish like feeling to it, like either like if it's named after a person, like Xavier School, like it's a Spanish person, um, or we use like a Spanish like name kind of thing, which
So
I'm
that
trying.
leads me to ask, like, are we placing this academy like in on Earth, so
Ooh,
to
that's a
speak,
good, yeah, that's a
on
good
the
question.
Earth? Are we putting
um,
this in the United States or
I
something
mean,
like
it
that?
could still, I think it could, if we wanted to be like not our Earth, but there would still be different languages and
Sure.
everything. We don't have to use like a made up European Elven language, and it could be, even though it is Spanish to us, it's not necessarily Spanish to the world we're in. But I'm like, it could be either our Earth or it could be a fantasy Earth
Hmm.
or a fantasy world that we're.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we're hoping to maybe deal with some of these real world problems, but like one step removed,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah,
maybe setting it in like not Earth and like not United States
yeah,
might help us with that. So like we don't necessarily have to talk about like, well, what happened with Trump 10 years ago or
right,
whatever,
yeah.
But
Yeah,
we can
I'd
still have
prefer, I would like to put Trump in the line. Like,
yeah,
no Trump.
yeah. In my magical fantasy world, he did not make it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're thinking like named after a Spanish person who founded this academy. Are we thinking that they're still part of the academia, or are they legendary? Are they passed on not too long ago?
Um, either legendary or maybe rumored missing.
Okay. I like rumored missing. That's very
Yeah.
intriguing. Cool. So they're definitely not going to be part of the day to day at first, but that might
Right. Yeah. But they're
make
talked
it.
about and.
Yeah. So you're Latinx, right?
Yes.
So you probably can come up with a much better Spanish name than I can.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like a really good one that's not super common in like, Hollywood tropes and everything. Um, and obviously not use any of my family names. Um, so do we
Yeah.
want just a last name or both first and like what do you think would make more sense?
I feel like it would probably have the full long name, but maybe people would just refer to it as one, as like the
Right.
last name or something, right?
Yeah. Um,
Like the full name is probably like the whatever Xavier School for Gifted Youths and Other Troubled Individuals. But everybody just calls it the Xavier School.
yeah.
So
Or the X Academy kind of thing.
right, yeah.
Um, I am looking at some last names to like jog beyond. Beyond the name is a really good site. When you want to look for like different regions, different countries. Um,
I'll keep that in mind because I've been playing in a game that's set in Japan,
oh, nice. Yeah.
and I run out of Japanese names I know pretty quick, and I don't want to just
Behind the name, not beyond. Why did I think it was beyond
behind
the
the
name?
name.
Yeah, behind the name, yeah. And they even break it down to like certain like mythologies, ancient, medieval, um, which is really neat. And so I just want to double check on something to make sure it's actually Spanish, because that would be funny. Uh, actually, I'll
And we're saying Spanish here, as in like Espanol or España.
Espanol,
Okay.
like because my family's from Central America, so preferably, yeah. Which it makes it a lot harder since a lot of the Latinx names comes from España. So, uh, just waiting for this to load. That's why. They even have what's really they also have where if you want like all the names that mean moon in a different languages that you could do, yeah, which is
Oh,
really cool.
yeah. I really get into like so like that game we're playing that's set in Japan. It's supposed to also be drawing on some themes from like anime and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, and I know in anime and manga, there's a tendency to give like importance to characters' names, right? So like if you look at this word, it can be interpreted this way, you know. So like if there's a character who like is from the moon or something, their name might literally be Moon if you interpret it one way. So
Right. Yeah. Um, got a first name and now I just gotta get a last name.
there's a cat with a moon on its head, and it's called Luna.
Oh yeah, from Sailor Moon.
right? Yeah. So that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's what one thing I loved about Sailor Moon because it was all based on Roman, mythology, so they were
Mm,
all like, all their names were hinted at that or their special powers.
yeah. So what words are you looking up for this legendary figure? What are you thinking?
Well, it's gonna be well, I'm hoping if that's okay, it's gonna be a woman founder.
Absolutely.
So there's a Latin Spanish name, that means flower. First name, which is Ryan, which I think is a really cool sounding name, and
How do you spell that?
Rayen.
Flower.
And yeah,
Okay.
and for last names, Castle's too easy because that's just Cruz. Some of
Oh,
yeah, so a lot of like the last names are kind of like Moon is Luna. Even Magic is just Mahika, which would be too on the nose.
yeah.
And even like Warrior is like Guerrero. Well, Guerrero is a pretty popular last name, at least for streets and stuff.
So I'm getting the idea here too that like some of the names that we're giving this person,
Mhm.
this woman, might reflect the values of the school, right?
Yeah,
And what they were hoping to accomplish by creating this school. So their first name, it sounds like it might just be more to do with their personality.
I think so. Like most people generally give like their children's names that they it's a name that sounds nice, or
Right,
or so that's why I was like not too. I was like, oh, that sounds like a nice name, Ryan. It means flower. Okay,
right.
kind of thing. Not like have like a super deep meaning.
But
But
her
the last name,
surname,
yeah, my I was thinking more having a bit of a meaning to it.
sure.
Um,
So maybe we
if
could kind of brainstorm. Uh,
if you have any idea, like possible names or meanings that would seem interesting, and I
yeah,
could pick.
so I think that Ryan had like a grand vision for the future. for these
Mhm.
children, right? There's something that she's hoping that the next generation can accomplish that her generation could not.
Okay.
Um, is it world domination? That might be a bit much. Um, maybe it's like harmony,
Okay.
go with that savior idea, of like, let's all just get along.
Right.
Maybe it's um, preparing them for a future where they might be targeted. So maybe it is that kind of Guerrero, like warrior idea. Um, Maybe she's really interested in them learning more about magic, since this is a relatively new thing
Mm.
that people are discovering. So maybe it's more about discovery or learning, um, excavating.
Yeah. I'm just looking up to see if any of these names have those that you've been mentioning. Um
Yeah, sorry if I let the fire hose on or
Oh,
whatever,
no, no, no,
but
no, it's good. It's just like that's one thing that's great about being a researcher. You can just quickly type in things.
Mhm. You're taking on your role very well.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't like be adverse to Guerrero since that does mean warrior and everything. I'm just double checking to see if there's nothing else that pops that feels better. Um, because like for peace, if her intentions was for like for us to be peace, even if that doesn't happen, then it'd be like de la paz because peace is paz. Um, Usually as a first name, there's Faith, which is Esperanza, but it could
Mm,
be, because this isn't technically our world, so that could be used as a last name,
sure.
like Reina de Esperanza.
In Spanish, do they have like a uh, you take your name from one of your parents kind of thing? Like we have Daniel and then Danielson. Is there
Uh,
something along those lines that might be turn a
there,
first name into a last name?
yeah, there's a lot like Sanchez is son of Sancho, so EZ I think is like the son of. I don't know if there's like a daughter of because usually like in American English, anything gender neutral tends to default to like the male
Right.
kind of thing. So
Esperanza says sounds kind of off.
right. Um yeah, the easy son of Rodrigo is Rodriguez kind of
Right.
or we could do no, I don't like that. That's too on the nose. Or maybe it's like she is for peace, but she understands like yeah, the next generation has to like wants it better for since she wants the next generation to be better, she has to be the prickly one, like or like
Mm.
so because there's um Puga, and this is more of a Spanish name, but that means thorn.
Mm.
So she wants to be a thorn into everybody's sides to get like to stir them up.
Like a spur. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
Or espina is also another word for thorn. So Rayen de Espina. And usually the de indicates that it was like taken from like the husband's name, but like sometimes a single parent will just give their child that like the de, but that's not yeah. So if you ever
Okay.
see like a DE in front of like a Spanish last name, that usually means it's because they took it from their partner.
Oh, okay.
But it
Hmm.
also sounds kind of nicer than being like
Just with the vowels, right?
yeah.
One other word I looked up. I was seeing if there was a Spanish term for like the spurs that you use on a horse or for horseback riding,
Mhm.
and I got espolón del caballo.
So Espolón is the spur and Caballo is the horse.
The horse, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about espolón?
I like that. Yeah. That sounds very strong.
Now we're thinking, would that probably wouldn't be De Espelon, would it? Or what would that? How would
No,
that
I
be
think
formatted?
Ryan, unless Espelon. I'm just writing it down. Uh, that could work. Like just like that, Ryan Espelon. Unless you want to do the traditional Latino thing where they have a bunch of middle names that are their parents and their grandparents or the saints. Like,
Oh right, yeah.
yeah. Because my real name is like 4 names long before my last name because my mom wanted to ensure that I was a girl, that I was healthy, so praying to a specific type of Mary, and then honoring my great grandmother and my grandmother. So it's like, so yeah.
That was very honorable of her. I would say yes, but let's leave them undefined.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
uh, you know, when we're
For the
thinking about
sake of the
it,
school plaque, it's just Ray and
right? That's one of the trivia questions for this game's trivia night. Let me make sure I get the right accent there. Cool. So we have and is it Ryan? How should I be pronouncing that?
Um, that is. I would like to me. I think it would be a Ryan
Cool.
instead of so it wouldn't be Ray N, but Ryan.
And
So almost
Espelon.
like Ryan, but not like more of the A sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I could, I would roll that R, but I can't.
Unfortunately, I can't either.
That's okay. So far I have the Ryan Espelon School for Magical something. So I think it could be for magical study, magical growth, magical development. Um, what do you think?
um, I kind of like growth or study. Um, for magical, not production. That doesn't sound right. Oh,
I think I know what you mean though. Like, uh, I wish
like
I could just see the
active.
hand
Yeah.
gesture. For magical development, maybe.
Yeah. Development. For
Okay.
magical development.
So everybody calls it though.
Uh,
Um, oh, maybe it has to do with like the ESP, like
that's what I think.
sensory
Yeah.
perception, right? So maybe they just call it
Or
like
the ESPA school.
ESPA. So like if you were hanging out with some kids in the neighborhood and they'd be like, "Oh, you go to ESPA or whatever."
Yeah.
Cool.
And I figure unlike in X-Men, there's more than one like magical schools, but this one's the one that we're playing in. Yeah.
Right. I
Or like
mean,
where Hogwarts seemed to be the school everyone in the world wanted to go to. Like,
or like the only one in the whole country, right?
yeah.
I mean, magic is pretty rare that there's probably not one in every town.
Right.
You might have to commute, or your parents might live in another town.
Yeah.
But these are still slightly small schools dotted around, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Uh, awesome. Okay, so but today our academy is going to be the ESPA.
Yes.
Good deal.
Yes.
Um, so when I think that the staff we see, at least some of them are going to be informed by the personality of Ryan, right? There might be some teachers who are a bit more strict, who are telling you need to apply yourself more because they're trying to be that same spur that Ryan was like, right? And those are the
Yeah.
sort of staff that you would hire. But I'm sure there's some other people who might be a bit more softer, or you might really.
Yeah. I think she'd probably like because to make it better, make the next generation better, got to do stuff that hadn't been done before. So maybe a couple of teachers who be considered eccentric, you know, to see,
Yeah.
well, maybe that style of teaching it will be better for the next generation than the way we learned, kind of thing. But yeah, but definitely with more focus of like you have to master your magic and everything,
Hmm.
and that like this is not a game, like kind of thing.
Right. Absolutely. Uh, I think it would be interesting too if a game had like a set of procedures for like creating the staff, right? The faculty.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, but first of all, I think it'd be great if we could make characters ourselves,
Okay.
right? Um, so I'm not sure yet if I will be playing a student or if I will be playing the supporting cast of teachers and NPCs and things like that.
Mhm.
But uh, I definitely think we should start off with making your student
Yes.
that you'll be playing today. So before we worry about the character sheet and what spells they know and things like that, um, I would love to give your character a name so we can refer to them directly. So
Sure. One.
sometimes for me, when I make a character, that's like the last thing I come to for some reason. Thinking of that one word is hard, but I want to start with that today instead.
No, definitely.
And
I'm very oh, I'm in the wrong thing, that's why.
if it's okay with you, I'd like to take like a just a quick 3 minute break
Sure.
off camera, and we'll come back and maybe we'll have some ideas for a character for you then.
Yeah, that's fine.
That work for you? Cool.
Yeah.
Be back in 3.
Okay.
Need to move around once in a while so my legs don't fall off.
No problem. Yeah.
Okay. So half of the fun from playing this game or from doing this exercise is that we can make a fun game to play in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But the other half of the fun is having a good time playing today. So today, with just the two of us, would you have more fun if we played in the style of like GM-less, everyone plays a character who's a teenager? Or would you have more fun if I took on the GM role and we played one-on-one like that?
Um, I think maybe probably this like for this particular session, like GM list would make more sense since we don't have like all the rules and the settings and everything, and we're just figuring it out. So
Cool.
then I think that's way it's also a little bit less pressure on either of us. You as a GM like figuring out like okay what to set up, and then me having to respond to everything.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it would be interesting to see. I've actually never played a GM list game before.
Cool. Well, we're doing it real loosey-goosey today, so it's the perfect setting for it. And maybe not a great representation of all those games out there that have got well-tuned practices for making that sing, but we'll have fun either way. Cool. So did you think of a name for your student?
Yes. It is spelled Ixchel and pronounced Ishel.
You said Ixchel?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you'd pronounce it Ishel, or like her friends would call her like Isha.
Cool. Okay. So I'll make a student here. I think I will name her. Well, it sounds like. So we have Isha, and then we're going to have. Let's say she goes by Carter. And maybe like that's her last name, but everybody
Okay.
calls her that by her last name. So I don't have a lot of significance behind that name, but is there some significance behind Ishel?
It is a Nwahadl name. That means rainbow lady, and I thought that was pretty cool.
I hope that Isha is a rainbow lady.
Yes.
Cool.
And apparently was the Mayan goddess of the earth, moon, and medicine.
Okay.
Oh.
So sounds like Isha is South American or our not South America equivalent. Is that right? Or Central American?
Mayans were like almost everywhere. So, but I like the idea because I don't think I've seen very many like South American like PCs or NPCs and RPGs. So yeah, she's not Brazil, Peru, from Peru.
Peruvian. Cool. And Carter will say that she's African American, or at least that's how I'm casting her in this show, right? um, that's one thing I like to do sometimes when I create characters, is think of like, who would I cast in this role?
Hmm.
But I'm not super great with names of actors and actresses, so sometimes I have to Google them. Who was
Yeah,
that person who played that one thing in that one movie? Yeah.
I don't know. I totally get that. Like I'm really good with faces, and then names will sometimes blank out.
Cool. So I'm Carter today, and you're Isha.
Hmm.
What do you think? Um, since we're kind of doing GMless, right? We're going to kind of work out the conflicts together.
Hmm.
So I think we're going to have a conflict-driven story. It sounds like because we kind of have like a somewhat darker tone. So there's going to be challenging things that these students have to deal with, right? So, are we going to be kind of digging into some of this meta plot going on here of like this growing danger towards magic users?
I like that, yeah. Maybe like it's like one of the study like classes, like or study periods times where most people just tend to goof off or whatever. Um and like there was something recently in the news that everyone like was talking about.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Yeah, that's a cool opening scene, right? And of course, instead of having like the the image conjured from a crystal ball, they just have like a flat screen right
Yeah.
up here. I'm
It's like built
imagining.
into the desk maybe
Oh
because
yeah,
it's future tech, like near future tech.
yeah. So I think it's a cool combo where like the teacher has this desk. It's sort of like uh, very futuristic, but then like the walls, maybe we have like lots of old bookshelves still with like
Yeah.
a bunch of old books. Um, this homeroom teacher, I'm thinking maybe they're a bit of uh, less professional teacher. Maybe they're kind of uh, dozing off or not really paying attention. I mean, this is just like homeroom or study group or whatever, so they don't need to be teaching anything. So
Right. As long as no one's like throwing magic at each other, like kind of
yeah,
thing.
they've got like a magazine up or something. So it's mostly the kids who are, I think, kind of paying attention to this news story. Um, I'm imagining that we have desks that are next to each other's,
Yeah.
right? Um, how has like Isha customized her space? Like, what is something that we see that she has that like helps showcase her personality?
Um, I think she has like a little mini hologram of like her pet that she had when back home. So like of a little cat and everything, and it's like um it makes a couple of like movements, but it's pretty much like it's not like interactive or anything, but it has like a couple of movements, kind of like the magic photos in Harry Potter and everything. And so she has that like as like her little like reminder of like home and everything. Usually a couple of what looks like to be like charms of like feathers and stuff, also just like more decorative that she like even if she has to like move to a different homeroom, this is what she brings with her, like that she has, just like and and generally I think she tends to have like a sketchbook out, and she's either like she writes her school notes, but she's also like doodling like all over it. Like most people wouldn't be able to tell if she's actually written any notes kind of thing.
Cool. So she's like really creative, but sounds like she's also pretty tied into her family too.
Yeah.
So I was imagining that this might be like a boarding school kind of situation that we sleep here most of the time in dormitories or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So like, do we see Isha like being a bit more homesick at times?
Definitely, yeah. I think like obviously mostly during the holidays kind of thing. And like sometimes she might go like weeks without it like being a bother. Like she's like acting like every other and other time she's like very like homesick.
Hmm.
And I think right now she's like in the middle of that, like not necessarily homesick, so she's able like she's willing to like, chat with people obviously and everything, but like she kind of like dazes off a little bit sometimes.
I think Carter might be similar in that she also tends to daze off or get distracted. I think that she has more of like a wanderlust sort of thing where she wants to like, she wants to be an adult now. She wants to go and explore the world. She's feeling empowered with her magical abilities and she's ready to go and see everything that the world has to offer, but she's
Mhm.
still stuck here in school. you know.
Yeah, like
Um I think that she's really into like travel, maybe.
Okay.
Um, so she has like a keychain with some souvenirs from some different uh, non-Earth locations that she's traveled to.
Yeah.
And so we're probably both kind of like have our head in the clouds for a moment when this dynamic news story pops up, right?
Yeah. Like maybe it's like it's set up so that like certain news stories that might be prevalent to the school, like everyone gets that alert kind of. Not exactly like always like an emergency broadcast kind of thing, but like, oh, might be relevant to the school kind of thing.
Sure. So we're not always seeing like, the sports scores or
Right.
whatever,
No.
but like
But like if this especially like maybe Ryan had set it up so that like anything about magic in the news and then the teachers in theory would use that as a teachable moment.
right. So
Or
class, let's connect this to potions, right?
right.
So what do you think the headline is like that pops out?
What would be something that would interest them? Uh,
And we're not necessarily thinking like out and out danger, like magical explosion
right,
goes
no.
off downtown. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because then that would just make the kids wanna go and react or might scare the kids if or
Right.
something, yeah. Um, maybe like a a botched robbery or something.
With like magical suspects
Yeah.
or magic suspected in robbery on 4th Street, right?
Yeah,
Cool.
and, like
So,
it seems almost obvious to, like, any magical user, like, "Nah, this was definitely not magic," kinda, but,
oh,
like, this is definitely some sort of weird high-tech thing that but it's definitely like, I guess it would all depends on our like, the magic system, like, or the whether or not they're tied to, I think Wizard of Earthsea series, they were all it had to be either spoken or written spells to be used. Harry Potter kinda blended that with in the beginning, it was spoken spells, and then they're like, "Oh, you can learn how to not say the spells out loud," kinda thing.
why'd they have to go
Uh,
uncomplicated?
yeah. So whether or not incantations are always needed or if it's or like in Full Metal Alchemist, you had to write out, like, the alchemical, like, sigils or symbols,
Right.
um, and everything for it to work. You couldn't just say it or whatever, you had to actually literally put it down somewhere and
So
or
let's
use
yeah, let's talk about magic in this world then, right? Like, what does it take? What does it look like?
I hmm.
Like when you imagine Isha like casting a spell, like what do you see in your mind, right?
Um, and I have it, it's hard like, kinda hard to explain, like, because it's not because I definitely don't like, the D&D style of, like, sorcery is kinda boring because it's so out there, where you have a book, and you have spells to cast.
Right. And only so
Um,
many can fit in your head at one time or
yeah.
whatever.
So I definitely don't like that. For Isha well, going with, like, the whole, like, because I named her with, like, the rainbow lady thing, I think hers has to do with maybe, like, is definitely colorful,
Sure.
like, maybe hand gestures or
Well, I was thinking like, these kids are learning magic, right? And I want them to be able to learn magic from a book in some
okay.
way. But you say colors, that sounds interesting to me. Like maybe magicians can like see colors that humans otherwise can't,
Ooh,
like
yeah.
magical colors, and they can learn to.
Maybe colors and ley lines,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
because
for sure.
ley lines are usually something only like magical people can tend to see. Um,
Right.
so like yeah,
So you can draw on certain ley lines to empower your spells,
right,
but
yeah,
maybe certain ley lines empower certain spells differently.
yeah, depending on the colors used.
And maybe that's how we know that this robbery on 4th Street wasn't magical because the magic that they're saying happened there, like 4th Street. Isn't that like that? Like I'm trying to think of a good word for like a magical color. Um,
Like, it would have had to have been, like, a really high level magic user for it to possible, and the suspects they chose or they think they're like, "Oh, no, they do other types." Like, their specialties, it would have been nearly impossible for these particular people to have done it
right.
because of the ley line mismatch.
Sure. Cool.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm just gonna make a note of like ley lines. uh, and maybe like yeah, different types of magic, right? Um,
Yeah.
so we're pretty sure this was like some kind of ray gun type thing.
Yeah.
It's like a fireball. Okay. So like imagining like we see this like news report, um, and like we see like two guys with like black ski masks like running out of a hole in a brick wall, and there's like a bluish green like fire around the edges of the
Yeah.
bricks, right?
I like that, yeah.
But we're saying it's botched, like they didn't actually get what they came for. Um,
Right, and like, nothing was stolen, but then they escaped, and then, like, the news was like, "Oh, well, there's these magic users that were nearby."
oh, okay.
And so those are the suspects, and it's like, "No." Like maybe they're, maybe the magic users that the only reason we know for sure, like, "Oh, it's definitely not them," like, maybe they're, like, activists or they're, like, kind of well known in a neighborhood or something. It's like,
Well,
"Oh, those people."
I was almost going to say maybe they're fellow students.
Yeah, that would really spur like, maybe in a different, grade.
Yeah. But we've seen them around the school, and
Yeah.
maybe they were playing hooky, but they certainly weren't robbing a bank.
Right.
Okay, interesting. So that's going to give us something to think about here. Can we do another 2-minute break while we
Yeah,
maybe
no
process
problem.
that? Cool. We'll do that real quick. Sorry, my partner's heading to a haunted house. I wanted to say goodbye to them
Oh,
real quick.
fun. You never know, it could be the last time. They'll come back as a ghost.
Ooh. Cool. Okay, so let's go ahead and give these two names as well. I almost said Michael and Diana, but that's a little too close. Let's go with we have a Devin.
Yeah, that works. Devin, so useless.
Right.
Devin and a Bradley.
Devin and Bradley. They're always getting into trouble.
Yeah.
But not this kind of trouble.
No, not this kind of trouble. Like they're the kinds that think their gift is just for fun kind of thing. So they never, it's like, yeah, let's goof off. Like, let's create this portal and skip class for, a couple of periods kind of thing.
Right. So I love that we have this intrigue to kind of contend with this session, right? This sort of problem going on in the outside world. But how do you think we should structure play within the school? Would you like to see scenes in this game where you're going to class? Or do you want scenes to mostly be what happens in between class or after class?
That is a good question.
Because
I think
a lot of the juicy stuff happened in between or after.
true. I feel like the one of the few games I have played before, Primetime Adventures. The way they do scene setting, because that Primetime Adventures, the whole thing is you're making a TV show. So
Right.
each session is an episode, and then depending on how much fan mail you have, everyone gets to have priority of who gets to set the scenes. And the way it was done was whoever had priority that episode, they got to have the major arc. But the whole thing was we each got to say what the next scene was. Oh, I want to see a scene with so and so, and so in this place. And then so while it won't be always in between or after session, after school or something, maybe someone wants to, yeah, I want to see how Devin did in the potions test, and then with a PC interacting for and that could just be a really small scene, you know. So it's where the play, if this became either GM list or even if the GM was guiding, it's okay, player so and so, what's the next scene you'd like to see, and then they set up any external conflict,
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about too is how can the rules support our characters being distinct, right? Um, like, in what ways does Isha deal with problems as opposed to Carter? And I was thinking there were students in Harry Potter who excelled in different classes
right.
more than others. And usually going to class was almost like a foreshadowing or precursor for a way that you could deal with an obstacle in the future.
Especially the defense against dark arts classes were pretty much.
Right. Or they go to they learn about the screaming mandrakes, and then that has to do with the unicorn or something like that. I forget
I think
exactly how it goes, but
through all 7 books, you only went to the horticulture class twice.
So I think one thing we might be able to do is make a list of different classes we could go to, and when you want, when it's your turn to set a scene, you can say, let's look at them going to X class today, right? We don't need to go to every class every day, but maybe each day you can decide which class you want to go to.
Focus on.
Right. And so maybe you either get a resource that you can spend mechanically if you chose to go to horticulture class or whatever. If you find a way to use your horticulture skills at the obstacle time, then you have a +1 or something along those lines.
Yeah,
Or
that'd
it could be
be
like an experience thing. I don't know.
kind of cool. Like if there was, I mean, some people might worry it might be a little crunchy. Um, but like having like temporary stat boosts depending on what classes you go to that day, because you don't like and like I said, it depends if we decide this to be, yeah, this could be a fully GM-less type of system, or if
Mhm.
it is with a GM system. Whereas like, yeah, we went to horticulture class today. Oh, whatever conflict we went to didn't affect that, but maybe the next time it would give us like a +1 in this plant monster, like attacking us, kind of. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Or maybe like it could be I choose the class, but
mhm.
then you tell me what we learn about. And then you choose the class and I tell you what we learned about. And then it's up to you to figure out how to make
Incorporate
use
it.
of it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that could work too. Yeah.
And we don't the great thing about Playstorming is that we don't need to sit here and write down every class. We just need to
Right.
say, what class are we going to today?
Yeah.
uh, so and that will also inform like sort of different things we can do with magic. So it sounds like ley lines is the primary
Yeah.
in the same way that like saying spells and flicking your wand is the primary in Harry Potter, even though there's also potions and
Yeah. Like
whatnot.
those are like minor like they support the magic kind of, it seems like.
Right. So if we had a class relating to using ley lines, it would probably be a specific application of that.
Yeah.
Cool. So, you know, this controversy in the news is on our minds, but then the school bell ding 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 goes off, right? And it's time for us to go to our next class. So, what class is Carter? I'm sorry, is Isha? What class are we interested in seeing her attend today?
Um, I think maybe a type, like I'm not sure what kind of history, but like a type of history class.
Okay.
Like either maybe magic history or like even a subset of like magic history, like famous witches, like or something. Or not witches,
Mm.
but like famous like magic users.
Do we have a word that we want to use for that in this setting?
In, instead of magic or
Like instead of like, do we want to call magic users, magicians, mages, wizards, witches,
I mean,
sorcerers?
I think for now, I think I like mages because it's yeah,
And we're thinking that's like a gender neutral term, right?
yeah,
Okay, cool. Let's go with mages then. So, famous or legendary mages of history is our first class.
yes, I like that.
Cool. So, I have to think about one of these mages we're learning about and hopefully what and maybe I'll like play the teacher in this role.
Okay,
And learning about them might give us some way to deal with this crisis, right?
right, yeah,
Okay. Let me take some notes here.
no problem, yeah,
So, one player decides a class to attend that day or a class to see on screen that day. Another player will lead the class discussion. Cool. So, like when we see Isha's character sheet, right? She's going to have listed on there legendary mages of history, and there's going to be like a box for a number or a check mark or something like that.
right, yeah,
Next. Cool. So the professor of history, um, he is a big fan of Ryan. I think he was like one of her disciples, right?
Mhm.
So he tries to embody her traits to a T. So this is a guy who's kind of a bit more intense and harsh, maybe a bit of whiplash after our kind of non-committal homeroom gym, whoever that was, right?
Right.
So let's call him Professor. Oh, what was the word for like spine or for thorn?
Espina.
This is Professor Espina then. And how appropriate would it be for Professor Espina to be talking about the namesake of the school?
Right.
So, today, class, we're going to be talking about one of the most important mages of our time. Uh, we have not seen or heard from her in some time after she went off on an expedition deep into the rainforest. But we hope to see her again soon. Surely you all know the name of our school, right?
Yes, of course.
Well, Miss Isha, you seem to be pretty well informed. Why don't you uh, tell the rest of the class?
Rayon Espelon is our
Yes.
founder.
Yes, and she founded this school on the principles of spurring and guiding young mages on to a bright and prosperous future. And that is my hope today as one of her first students. It might surprise you. Yes. I am younger than I look. Now, uh, Mrs. Espelon, she was well regarded for her ability to track down ley lines. And in fact, she was one of the first mages to start mapping the ley lines across the globe and to theorize about what they might do, how they might appear. And she specialized in a particular color of magic and a particular ley line that followed that. Uh, and I'm going to Google something real quick
No problem.
because there's all these magical colors that I should know. Um, that all of them are going blank. They're like from Carcosa. What are those called?
I'm pretty sure he spends like at least once a week talking about our founder, like different aspects.
Right.
so so yeah, Isha is less like I like our founder, I like the school, but really.
Let's go with Octarine,
Ooh.
which is from the Discworld novels. If you ever read any of those, that's their color of magic. So, uh, Professor or Dr. Ryan, she was a specialist in the color Octarine, um, which, as you know, is used in the field of uh, physical alteration, or alteration is what we use for the shorthand. So anywhere that you can find an octarine ley line, you will find yourself able to alter the physical world more strongly, right? So that's where we last heard that the doctor was going off to explore a ley line deep in the rainforest. Uh, we all hope that she comes back soon. I get a tear in my eye when I think about it sometimes, but I have to stay strong. I have to raise these students in her stead. Keep it together. Keep it together, Espina. Okay. And I think the school bell rings. Well, did you have any questions before we go on for the professor?
That is So I think normally she would have like she's usually pretty attentive in class, but because he's always talking about like she only had like half an ear. It's like, oh, that's kind of interesting, but like she kind of like tuned out this time. Even though she
Mm,
wrote she like doodled in her notes the octarine and then like subconsciously was like, oh yeah, that fire with the big hole in in the wall. I was like, "Oh, I don't think that was that right ley line, but, whatever, he's going on and on again," kinda thing.
right. I think maybe the whole class we kind of see is kind of like Slackjawed, like, yeah, we talked about this like 2 days ago or whatever.
Right, yeah.
Cool. And then, school bell rings and gives you all a merciful respite from this class. Cool. So I'm going to make a note here. Class is Legendary Mages of History, Professor Espina.
Fanboy.
So, what's that? Sorry.
Professor Espina, fanboy.
Fanboy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, put that parenthetical right there. Um, so class that Carter is interested in, I think, is going to be magic and technology.
Ooh. What would be a good name for that? So maybe the teacher then's name is, uh, Angelina Vajo.
And that's
Uh,
VAJO.
yes. Which is a little bit play on steam and steampunk. As a 'Cause I like steampunk. I like the idea of steampunk and magic together. Um, okay. With the ley lines, octarine. Just trying to think of some notes real quick. So I think in her class, is probably one of the few classrooms where it's very little like old school stuff. So it's all very tech, like smooth and sleek looking. She's always trying to get the latest like technology that will be compatible with magic because no matter what, like the whole school is full of magic and everything. Um and she uses it's kind of like one of those like photo dark rooms where you have to have a special light so that way you don't overexpose like old photography and stuff. So she has it set that way so that you could see better like the ley lines and everything. Like for people, especially for like new magic users, like it's one of those things where you have to learn how to see it and everything. Um and she likes to do experiments of like this ley line will not work with like this toaster. Like, kind of like silly stuff like that. Um, so she would be talking like her major experiment like that she wants to show off. Um, it's like right there on the tip of my tongue. Uh, like I can visualize it. It's like uh it has to like oh, okay. So, because the banker, the bank robbery happened like not too far away, right?
Right.
So she would be like, so today we'd be talking about the ley lines in the area. Not every ley line is a good ley line, and you can't use all magic in one area because then you'll just muddle things up, especially when we have technology that already just doesn't work together. So, let's say you want to use, if you're one of those types that likes to protect yourself not with magic, but with weaponry, it's not very good when there's a ley line that's active, especially in our area right now, um, to use certain guns. And she'll point out and she'll pick up one that's like kind of looks like a futuristic like laser pistol. It's like, don't worry, this one, as you can see, no bullets, no laser bullets, so no one be afraid. Though if you want to test one out later, we'll have to sign a waiver. And so she puts it back together, and it's like, so the reason why this gun would not be good in this area is that it is actually charged. Some of this new technology, some of those people, they do want to use our magic when they can't. So this particular gun is laced with a bit of how you say, like, crystal infused magic. And its gun, for the most part, is good protection. Doesn't kill anybody. Hurts them a lot. They might have to lay down for, a few hours and everything. But it's not good in this area. And this particular gun is not recommended to be in this area because it can backfire. And the backfire, not necessarily deadly either, but let's just say you're not going to get out of bed for many, many months. So if you want to protect yourself and you don't want to use this kind of gun in this area with the ley lines that we have, and if you refer to your textbook, the type of ley lines we do have is on page 185, which you all should know by now, since you're not first year students, and if you've been listening, we have to use sorry, like we have to use the more neutral colors of of magic, because the ley lines here are already super volatile, and it wouldn't cause what it. Well, I can do this, and she pulls out an even like one of those like tiny like pistols types, and she points at. She has like this dummy that's been already scarred up to hell because she likes to use it as a practice dummy. She shoots it, and it just makes like a little ping sound. It's like, that's nothing, right? Right now we're in a nice dead zone. It's one of the reasons why our dear Espalon chose this site, and hopefully they'll find her soon. I'm sure she's fine. She gets caught up in her work sometimes, It doesn't do anything like major. It's a useless piece. I mean, I would rather use magic than this thing, but to each their own. However, if you do lace something as small as this with the magic of this particular laser gun, and I have an example right here, and she pulls out like a small tiny crystal that's slightly glowing with like imbued magic, and puts it in like as if it's a bullet. It's gonna make a much, much larger explosion. And she basically blasts the dummy's head off. And some of the kids, other kids are like, whoa, this is not good. And most people think of that little tiny thing in this gun, and it's going to make a huge hole and probably ruin anything that why would anyone do that? You definitely don't want that. Would possibly might kill a person. Maybe. We're not too sure. I'm not allowed to experiment on this because, well, and she starts rambling off about how she hasn't been able to get the grants and permits from the city to do her experiments and everything. And since Espelon's not here to advocate for me, everything's on hold. So we're gonna have a test later.
So I think one of these kids in this class is like sort of a know-it-all kind of person, and they raise their hand and say, "Professor, My dad says that magical guns are dangerous and should be outlawed.
I mean, guns in general should be outlawed, but if we have to use guns, I would prefer a magical gun. It makes sense that your dad would say that. Like I said, this area's ley lines are horrible for these guns, but I think it should be, on a case by case basis.
This is where I'll speak up here as
Mhm.
Carter and I'll say, Professor, do you think that, why do you think that you need a gun?
And she's like, it's like a little quiet, and she looks at the little derringer that, and then it's like, well, I don't necessarily need a gun. I think they're fascinating technology, especially the ones that are like this. And she picks up the empty laser one. But sometimes in a situation, and if the ley lines aren't in your favor, there's not many people. I mean, there's always going to be people who disagree with you, who don't like you. I mean, that's just the way the world is, you know? But if it's obvious you are a mage, you might want to have some extra protection. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself with my magic, but it is okay if you want to bolster. You're only learning after all to use one of these wonderful, and she displays all the broken experimental machinery she has. One of these is perfectly okay. Just make sure you check that the ley lines lay out correctly. Otherwise, why bother? Does that answer your question, Miss Carter?
Well, should I worry about getting in trouble if I am walking around with one of those things?
And well, this little one, as long as it's a regular bullet in here, you should be fine as long as you have a permit. Now, this one, yes, they are not allowed for now. I know there's some people petitioning for our city, because the ley lines that we have in this city are a little bit more hostile to these new combination magic tech. But you should, if you're walking around alone, you should be on guard. Just, being a young girl in the city.
Hot child in the city. So I think that that's probably where I school bell dings again. So we're at about an hour and 45 in. I think this is time for our 15-minute long break.
Okay.
I'm thinking maybe when we come back, we'll have like Carter and Isha like talking about what we learned in class today and maybe thinking about this mystery a bit more. Does that
Yeah.
sound cool?
Yeah.
So
So 3:05-ish?
yeah, 5 after.
Okay. Sounds good.
See you.
See you soon. Hola.
Welcome back. How was your break?
Good. It was nice to walk and stretch a little bit.
Yeah, I like the 15-minute ones. They kind of help recharge me.
Yeah.
Cool. So to recap, we took notes. We learned about a little bit more about ley lines and how octarine ley lines are ones that empower alteration spells. And we learned about crystals that are attuned to specific ley lines, and a bad combo can lead to either a weak effect or a dangerous consequence.
Yes.
Cool. So, like, I'm imagining that we're meeting up at our sort of like secret friend hideout, right? Like, what do you think that would be?
Considering that like Carter like is a traveler type and Isha kind of misses home a bit, it would be like maybe like somewhere still on campus. It's like a little like wooded area, and they found like a little, you know, and they've set up like personal like items because no one ever tends to like go out this way. Not because like it's like evil like or anything. It's just that like there's the city. Why would you want to go into like nature?
Right. Exactly. Cool. Almost like a tree house sort of situation, except we haven't built a whole tree
Yeah, it's
house out here.
like in parts kind of.
Cool. So we're meeting up at our usual place. I think it's like uh, late in the afternoon, like the sun is maybe starting to set now, sort of thing.
Mhm.
Uh, and Carter has like her smartphone device out, right? Um, and we're like looking over this footage, right? And we're seeing these mugshots of Devin and Bradley,
Yes.
right? Isha, this is just crazy.
I know. I mean, Devin doesn't even know how to make that kind of like magic. He slept through the last quiz.
And Professor, which one was it? Professor
Espina
Vahos,
or Vada.
she was showing us like local ley lines, and that one over there was, if they needed to like create an alteration effect to blow up that wall, they wouldn't have done it there. That's a totally different ley line color out there.
And Isha's looking at like because she always has her sketchbook out, and so she's still on the same page where like she hadn't been paying attention. It's like and stares like, oh yeah, you're right.
Isha, have you been zoning off in class again?
Come on, Professor Fanboy was just going on and on about the founder. Like we haven't like we don't know her shoe size by this point.
Well, we probably will soon, because
Ugh.
I have a feeling that he's not done with that course.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hopefully, Espelon will be found soon. Then he could maybe focus on someone else.
yeah, I'd like to hear about another mage every once in a while. But Devin and Bradley, I don't like know them personally, but they don't seem like total flunkies. Like they would know something about this, right?
No, like
Enough not to blow themselves up, at least, right?
yeah, I mean, I could have sworn Bradley. I mean, I'm here on scholarship. I'm pretty sure Bradley wasn't. So why would they need to like go steal shit,
Hmm.
especially so flashy? I mean, if I was gonna, not that I was gonna steal, but like if I was gonna steal, I wouldn't be like making it known to everybody.
I mean, you tell me though, right?
Of course, of course.
So, like, if I stole something, I should probably tell you?
Have you stole something?
Well, when Vaho wasn't looking, I may have picked up one of these. I think I'll like pull out like that tiny little
Yeah.
Derringer gun, right?
I was like, eh, wow! Wait, do you know how to use one of those?
Uh, I mean, for the most part.
You didn't steal one of those crystal thingies, did you?
Well, apparently there's like a bunch of different kinds that you need, so that it will be more empowered. But I guess like without a crystal, it'll still do something.
Yeah, I think it's like a regular non-mage. I mean, that's cool looking, but like, is there some? Are you scared of something?
Well, it's like what Fahu was saying, maybe we need to like protect ourselves. If it's true that Devin and Bradley were innocent, doesn't it scare you that they were so quick to be picked up and arrested like that? Just because they're magic users?
Yeah, I mean, if anything, they should have been arrested for skipping class, not making that big explosion. I don't think. I mean, it's
It
safer. It seems like it's safer here in the city than it was from my home, but I mean, there wasn't very many guns either back there.
maybe like we look down at the phone and we see some of the people like that are being interviewed like afterwards about what they saw. We're hearing people saying stuff like, well, I don't have anything against magic users in particular. I just think maybe, that some of them are bad people. And if they are bad people and they can use magic, maybe we need to, I don't know, be more cautious.
Isha makes a face at like hearing that. It's like, and she like mutters in Spanish a little bit, like, ah, I thought it would be better over here.
Was it not so good at home for
They
you?
were they were superstitious, not scared. They were superstitious,
Hmm.
but
Well,
Mama thought
I'm
it would be better coming to this school than the one that was near our place. Safer.
really. What was so bad about your local school?
Uh, not so much. I mean, my old friends were there, but there was always a lot of protests and um like religious people like thinking, we're the devil. You know, it was just not fun to go to all the time. Here, I mean, all I have to worry about is remembering how tall our Espalon was.
Well, I'm sorry you had to deal with that, Isha. I mean, I've born and raised in this town, and I mean, now I feel bad for always talking about wanting to get out of here when sounds like this has been a nice place for you to come to.
I mean, I miss home a lot. There's a lot of great things about home that you can't do here. I mean, but you like to travel. That's cool. I mean, obviously, not every place is going to be as nice here or as bad there, or.
Hmm. Well, you know, it seemed like our homeroom teacher didn't really care too much about Devin and Bradley. I think I
Yeah.
saw him kind of just snort and go back to reading his magazine.
Yeah, I don't think he really I mean, not that he's that great of a teacher either, but I don't think he liked them too much. And it's only they do like, stupid little pranks, nothing, you know. I didn't mind my hair being green for a couple of days.
Yeah, and I got over those kitten ears after the first week.
I mean, they were kind of cute.
I think she kind of like scratches like the back of her head real quick. Look, I'm just worried that maybe nobody's going to do anything about this unless we go and investigate things ourselves.
And he just thinks about like the other teachers like that she has, and even though some of them are strict, they're very like they don't tend to use like the news topics that do come up very often. He's like, yeah, I mean, If Espelon was still around, I'm sure she would be all she's always been, good at advocating for us. Man, it really does suck that she's missing. You,
Hmm.
but I think you have a point, Carter. I mean, if everyone's just gonna like, write those dudes off, and I'm pretty sure they didn't do it. And I don't think they would want to do something like that anyways.
I'm not saying we go and break him out of jail,
Oh, no.
but maybe if we can find out what probably really happened, we could tell the teachers about it and maybe they could do something.
Yeah. I mean, as long as we do it, after school, we shouldn't get in trouble, right? And
That's what Devin and Bradley should have done, and they probably wouldn't be in this predicament.
definitely, yeah. Okay.
So I'm imagining we kick off our broomsticks. You know, we got to have some broomsticks, right?
Oh, yeah.
Uh, but they're probably like kind of like the Nimbus 2000 or whatever it was, where like they're sort of technologically adapted, right?
Yeah, they have like a little like holder for the phones or GPS.
Right. uh, so they got the Bluetooth connected to your witch's broom, right?
Yeah, and instead of traffic alerts, it's weather alerts.
Yeah, right. Yeah, avoid hailstorm on I-95 or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining like we're going to go check out the scene of the crime, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is necessarily like a mystery game, so
Mhm.
to speak. This session we're using a mystery, um, but I think that this might be a time where we might look to the rules as a way to help us uncover clues, right?
Right. Yeah.
Where we might like use some ability or lesson to like get a benefit from, right?
Yeah, like since like ley lines are a major part of the magic that like maybe there's points into like a ley line like ley line lore,
Right.
or
Yeah. So do we want to make this like a random roll sort of thing? Like we roll a die, and if we get a better result, we get more information. Do we want to make it where a low result means a negative consequence or just failure?
Mhm.
Or do we just want to be able to say, yes, we know one thing about the situation because we went to class, we paid attention?
Right. So many different types of way of rolling.
Yeah,
um
right. Or maybe we could do a magic thing and we have to like uh, consult the runes or tarot or something like that.
right,
You know.
yeah. Like I'm not a too big of a fan of like where you have to have a certain number of results as
Hmm.
like being successful. Um like I haven't played very much Apocalypse Engine stuff, but like that I've read a few of those the rule books of those. And so I kind of like where it's like not unless you do like a crit fail or something. Like it's like variances of like, oh, if you roll like all sixes, then you get like all the like you suddenly had an epiphany and you have all the knowledge, or maybe like success with a consequence, like
Mm.
kind of thing.
So not like a binary pass fail thing,
Right,
but
yeah,
like
like a variance.
a spectrum. Cool. Um, yeah, well, I'm happy with using uh, the PBTA engine as a go-to for now. I'm pretty familiar with that. Uh, so typically, the way that goes mechanically, right, is that you roll 2d6. And the nice thing about using 2d6 as opposed to like 1d12 or something like that is that
Mhm.
it kind of makes a curve.
Yeah.
So it pushes things towards the middle. So you're more likely to have like a mixed result.
Yeah,
Do
I
you
did.
do you like those dice?
Yeah, like 2d6. Trying
Cool.
to get the roll for your party link up just to have
Cool.
that as a reference.
Yeah, and have you like played around with that at all yet?
A little bit, because I know it has like it took me a while to realize what DF was.
Oh yeah. But for purposes of just rolling two six-sided dice, it's pretty
Yeah,
easy, right?
yeah,
Cool. So normally with like PBTA, you have some way of affecting the outcome based on either like your ability or some like special move you have.
right.
And we haven't necessarily defined our characters like innate abilities or attributes or anything, but we do have these classes we've attended.
Yeah, that it reminds me a little bit vaguely of what's it? That new superhero game. Oh, geez.
PBTA or something else.
I think it's based on PBTA. I'm like,
Well, it might. So Masks is a PBTA superhero game.
it's like something city, I think, or
Like Halcyon City was one of the
I
or
just
City
backed it.
Heroes,
I'm like,
City of
oh my
Mist.
City Mist, yes.
Yes.
City Mist. Where like I watched a play an actual play of it, and it was like they had tags, and the tags like bolstered your, so I would think like the
Right.
classes were like that class would be considered a tag that would bolster the die roll.
Cool. So do you have like a limited number of uses of your tag, do you think, from school?
Yeah, like maybe depending on how much you paid attention. Like like Isha didn't pay super attention, so she would only like maybe only get a bonus of one. Whereas for legendary mages of history, whereas Carter seemed to have paid super attention, so like maybe the max was like 3 or something, you know.
Yeah, okay.
Because and in that way, like hopefully in theory people would play out those classes as like they wouldn't always, because it wouldn't make sense to always be super attentive. Like something could, you know.
Sure. Yeah, so it could be on your mind, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm wondering here is we could have two sources affecting this challenge, right?
Mhm.
You know, like um maybe Carter is like more perceptive than Isha is, or
Mhm.
but maybe Isha is better at like empathy or like social interaction.
Right.
So you could have a modifier from your stats, so to speak, right? And then you could also maybe add a tag from a class you learned. Because the thing I think is like, if you're rolling just straight 2d6,
Mhm.
it's pretty hard to like get a success. It's like one in, I think it's like 1 in 36 chance. Is that right? No, like a 1 in 12 chance
Mhm.
that you'll have a complete success. And then it's like a like almost like a 50% chance I think that you'll fail.
Right.
So if you can only apply like a school tag or class tag like once, you're
Mhm.
going to fail at a lot of other stuff.
Right.
So being able to have something that you're still good at might be good, right?
Yeah.
So if we're saying like Isha is like scoping out these ley lines, right? Um, were we both in each other's classes, or did like
Um, I
are we
think based on
saying
the
you're both focused?
last scene, it kind of was implied that we were
Never
both
mind.
in we were both in them.
Right. So maybe like the person who picked the class gets an extra number of tags,
Okay. Yeah.
but other people still get one.
Yeah.
So like if I'm making my character sheet for Carter, right, in my head, um, I have like different stats maybe or whatever, you know, like awareness, empathy, like logical processing power, something like that.
Yeah.
And then I have like
Thievery.
my right, and then I have like my lesson tags, right? So I'm thinking right now I have like 2 tags for um, magic and technology, right?
Mhm.
And then I have 1 in mages of history, right? And I'm imagining like if we made this into a game, these could either be a predetermined list or they could be blanks that you fill in.
Right.
So like what's hmm. So if you had to like make up a stat that describes something that Isha's like particularly good at, what would that be? What would you name it?
Um, let's see. Like, things to do with nature? Like, what would
Mm,
be good? Like, she'd be better, like, yeah,
like outdoorsy kind of stuff, even?
yeah, outdoorsy kind of stuff. Cause
Yeah. Hmm. Because I think about school, right, and the different like ways you can categorize kids in school. So like maybe like scout
yeah, like,
could be a word,
yeah, scout.
and that could almost be kind of like it also like brings to mind like the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, right? And so
Right, yeah.
cool. So Isha's good at scouting, or at being a scout.
Mhm.
So let's just like say that maybe Isha has a +1 in scout,
Okay.
which I think applies in this situation, right?
Yeah.
And then you can use one of those tags, and maybe what that does, like mechanically, is gives you. Have you heard of people using advantage in PBT or even in D&D, right?
In D&D, yeah, where you get to roll 2 dice and you get, like, the highest die roll and
Right.
everything.
So maybe if you apply a tag, you also get advantage. So you can roll 3 dice and keep the 2
Okay.
highest.
Okay.
And then you still get your +1 for being a scout.
Right.
So which lesson do you think you're drawing a tag from here?
Um, so to go with scout, I think actually probably, like, magic and technology since Vaho talked so much about, like, the placement of the ley lines, and
Right.
so she's looking like, I think Issa would probably be looking for, like, since that's more natural in nature, like, where are the ley lines here, like, to confirm what type they were, and if they had been, like, accessed recently or whatever.
Cool. So maybe you should roll that.
Okay, so,
Or do you think this is something that Carter's doing?
um well, it seems like Carter seemed to be more interested in, like, since she, like, procured the gun, and
Mhm.
she was really curious that she's looking maybe at the technological aspect, like, the actual, like, burn marks or whatever, you know?
Right.
Like, technically the non-magical part of the crime scene.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
seems like she might be.
So you're getting the first sight on the ley lines here then, right?
Yeah. So,
Um so what do you think like so what are we like hoping to find out and what are we worried might happen if you fail?
um,
Because if we're going with the PBTA style, like usually failure doesn't just like you said, it's not just oh you fail, you don't see anything, but like something
right.
complicated happens too.
Like, I'm trying to think, for Isha, whether it'd be, like, maybe accidentally tripping something magically.
Oh yeah,
And then like maybe for Carter would be like if she failed, she disturbed the crime, even though technically like, oh, we have the suspect, but she disturbed the crime scene
Yeah, yeah,
by
yeah, yeah.
accident, like tripping over one of the broken bricks or something, you know?
That could be bad.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, yeah. So like on a success, you're probably like learning a lot of useful information, and maybe on a mixed result, you're just getting like one piece of information that we can hope to like
Right.
use, right?
Yeah. That sounds possible.
Cool. Um, all right. Did you have any luck with Roll for Your Party? Getting the link for that?
Yeah, I got it open. And I just like before we decided like what the die roll should be, I was just testing it out.
Nice.
So in theory it would be 3d6 and then I keep the two highest and then add +1 to scout, right?
Sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
How do you feel about that system? Is that simple enough?
Yeah, that I think that's like once it's written like in front of you written down, it makes sense. Like, yeah, the classes would indicate like you adding dice and then what's always on your character sheet would help if it's relevant would help modify the result. So I just have to there submit. Wait. Sorry. I put 3 and it gave me 5 dice for some reason.
Oh no, that's weird. Did it roll two
Okay.
first and then three more?
Maybe. Let me
Maybe try clearing them out and trying again.
yeah, let me clear everything. Clear all dice, please. Okay, there we go. So I got a 1, 2, and a 6. I'll take the 2 and a 6 for 8 and then scout, so that'd be 9.
Okay. So that's like a mixed success. So it sounds like we're gonna get some information here. Not quite enough maybe to satisfy the teachers, right?
Right, yeah.
But it might give us a clue towards something else. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna look at the time here. We have an hour and a half left. So I'm just gonna make a clock. This
Mhm.
isn't necessarily like part of the rules that we might make, but this is just a way that we can simulate gathering evidence for this thing.
Right.
Um, and basically, like with like a mixed success, you still get one piece of this clock filled in, and once we fill in the all four pieces of the clock, then we have enough info.
Okay, yeah.
Um, so I'll just go make like a 4 segment clock. So we have to find 3 more pieces of evidence, basically.
Mhm.
But I think we should have like some tension, like something bad that could happen if we fail.
Mhm.
So like what what is this like looming threat that we're not fully aware of just yet?
Um, maybe using Devin Bradley as like the catalyst for something.
Oh.
Maybe like one of the anti groups are like, "We'll see," you know, like even though no one got hurt and nothing got stolen, you know.
So this is like popular opinion turning against mages, or is this like one particular nasty group
I'm thinking maybe one particular nasty group.
and we're worried about them like hearing that we're digging into this crime?
Um, I'm not sure.
Because it sound maybe like they're responsible for what's happening here, right?
Right.
And they're not wanting anybody coming and
Maybe it would like yeah, maybe they were doing this to try to like start getting people scared about mages and they just got very lucky that there happened to be two mages or students that were there and they're like, "Okay, let's roll with it." And
cool.
so it would be bad for them because they're gonna start this like little mini campaign. It'd be bad for them for it to be debunked.
Yeah. So, um, I'll give them another 4-segment clock here because we're going to see if they show up today. That'll be kind of
Okay.
our attention. Do we want to fill in a clock for that mixed result, or is that too much of a consequence?
Um,
Maybe we can work with like ones and twos here, right? So like if you get a full success, you get to fill 2 in the good clock. If you get a mixed success, it's 1 in each. And if you fail, you got to put 2 in the bad clock.
that works, I think, for yeah.
Just just for
For now.
tonight, for
Yeah.
pacing purposes. Okay. So, um, do you want to, since we're doing this GM list, do you want to describe the evidence you uncover that leads us closer to figuring out what really happened? Or do you want to describe the first stirrings of attention being drawn to us from this negative group?
I think I want to do like what information Isha found.
Cool. So, yeah, tell us what you found.
So, like, it kind of like for her, whenever she does like this type of magic, it looks like she's like dazing off again, like kind of thing. Like some even Carter doesn't like is she actually doing it or kind of thing. So it takes her like a couple of minutes. It's like I don't know. Maybe it's because there's so much disturbance around here. I don't think so. It looks like the lines are happy. It, they don't seem like they've been. I don't think they've been disturbed at all. I mean, technically, there's magic that could make them happy again, but I mean, they found Devin and Bradley pretty quickly, right?
You sure you don't have some dust in your third eye? It just doesn't seem like a very happy place. You
Well,
sure?
I'm pretty sure with the magic, unless something else. I mean, th- yeah, I'm almost sure.
Hmm. So, like off in the distance, we see like the camera's kind of showing like this figure in the background, and
Hmm.
it's just like somebody like who's kind of leaning out their window, like from like a second or third story building down the road, like looking at us,
Hmm.
and then like we see them like it's too dark to really see what they look like, but they kind of retreat back into their apartment and like close the window, right?
Nice.
So you're talking about these happy ley lines, right? And that kind of energy they're giving off, and that's probably like related to a certain color or something. So I'm gonna go like you thought or suggested. I'm gonna go look at these bricks a bit closer, and I think like yeah, I even like step under the caution tape, right? And that's like my point of no return in this story, right? Like
Right.
this is the 100 acre wood sort of thing, right? Like, um, so I'm gonna kind of walk up to this brick hole and look at these like char marks and like maybe like for Carter, she relates to magic like more with odors. So maybe like there's
Mm.
a certain smell that's related here. So she's kind of like sniffing things out literally. Um, so I think about stats for Carter, and I think that she's scouting is like not her priority. I don't think that it's a weakness for her
Hmm.
because she is like a outgoing, adventurous person, but maybe less so like in the woods. So or perceiving things. So maybe like this is a neutral action for her.
Okay.
I think she might do better with like um working with technology or like uh, learning new things or figuring new things out or like uh, inventing things or something like that.
Hmm.
So maybe that's like where her strength lies. So for now, though, I think this is like an even keel, but
Okay.
I'm going to use a tag from my magic and technology class to see if I can figure out what happened here, right?
Hmm.
So I'm going to mark one use of that. Um, Do you have a link to the room? You have that URL up there?
Oh yeah, hold on. I'm just like messing around in the room.
The totally light gecko. This gecko's totally light, y'all.
Yeah.
All right, computer. There we go. Cool. And I think I'll use some yellow dice to distinguish mine. Oh boy,
Ah,
that is not good. That is a 4 for me.
yep.
Okay, so it sounds like we're filling in 2 spots on this clock,
Uh-oh.
which means that you know the these forces are really ramping up here. If we were to fill in one more clock, they would show up, right?
Yeah.
So what does that like look like on screen, do you think?
Um, I think they probably had like, but beyond the person that was like in that window, they also had someone like hovering around to make sure like they're super paranoid type. So it's like, okay, we got to make sure, you know, everything sticks with our story because they're going to be running our little call to action on the news and like at 6 o'clock tonight or whatever. And so even though like the police are gone because they have their suspects and the business is closed for the moment, there's like someone else like coming around and noticing, oh, here's two like, school kids like messing with what's going on here. Um and like calling in like or like massively like texting on their phone. Um like I think we need to bring some more people in. I think something's going on, like kind of thing. So unbeknownst to us, we don't know that we might get ganged up upon soon.
I almost wish somebody had just called the police instead.
Right?
Okay. So, I can't figure out what happened here. Like, I don't know if this was technology or not. I guess my theory was that, we're thinking maybe these aren't magical. Maybe it was these criminals weren't magical at all. Maybe they were trying to use magical technology but didn't understand how to use it and something bad happened. That's what Professor Vaho was talking about.
Yeah. I mean, it would make sense with the ley lines still being a little happy in this area, but I mean, and she goes up to like the burn marks and everything. It's like it kind of looks like whenever Vaho messes up with her magic in the text. I don't know. I don't think this will be enough. I mean, and like she looks around trying to see if there's anything that might indicate like any signature of like Devin or Bradley,
Mm.
like inside the store. Like,
Yeah, so we need to go inside now, right?
yeah.
So what do we think in this place is? Is it like a bank? Is it a store, a jewelry store?
Mm. Well, if it was a bank, I'm pretty sure there'd be people still there and everything.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, so maybe like a jewelry store, like everything else got relocked up.
If you were a gang who was anti-magic, so
Oh, yeah.
are
Hmm.
we saying that these criminals were just petty thieves who tried to up their game with technology and failed? Or are we thinking that this has all been a plot?
I think it's all been a plot, and they're starting with like things that aren't obvious. So yeah, like maybe like a jewelry store or something, and then it was planned to escalate to like, oh, the
Mm,
magic people they hate us muggles,
right. And maybe that's like an element of the failure too, is that it's made the this event more sinister than it necessarily was to start with, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think we're like gonna go inside and try to find evidence of Devin and Bradley. Um, and if we find none, we're hoping that that lack of evidence is enough to point to something. And maybe even if we find something that the police overlooked, we could take that to the teachers, right?
Right.
So, do you think that this is still Isha's like scout attribute that's coming into play here, or is there something? Is there a different aspect of herself that she's using at this time?
Mm,
This could still be like, almost like if you were looking at animal tracks sort of thing, right?
yeah. Yeah, I think like yeah, it would still be scout.
Cool.
But I don't think any of the class tags would work. Like,
Mm-hmm. Good point.
yeah. The only other thing I could think of is it would be like stat wise, like maybe like something like empathy or something like thinking like no, they like even though I barely know these two people, like
Right.
you know,
Or maybe if you did know them more, you would have like a relationship with them and you could draw on that for a
right,
mechanical bonus. But
yeah. But no, we kind of established that there's just some classmates that goof off.
but do you
Okay,
want to maybe like roll again and see?
yeah. So that's just 2d6. Let's see if I do this right. Oh, I'll do this. Reroll selected. Oh shit.
Snake eyes?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh damn.
We might end up
We
ending
are
this with a
not
cliffhanger.
right. We are not good invested in amateur investigators.
Well, so, mm,
Damn.
like, I think what this is like we do find something, but it's like the last thing we wanted to find,
Ooh,
right?
May
The worst possible thing to uncover here.
like something that's school branded.
Oh, so they have an insider, huh?
Maybe, yeah.
Da-da-da. It's a Slytherin for sure.
Oh yeah, totally.
Wow, so like um what do you think, like is it a piece of technology from Professor Vaho's lab?
Mm,
Is it a personal belonging of Professor Espina? I think we should kind of tie into the
right, yeah.
NPCs we have, right?
Uh, it is it might be too specific. It is a signed copy from Professor Espinina about the founder.
Ooh, the unauthorized biography
Yes.
of the legendary Ryan Espolon. Oh, interesting. And it's got his signature, right?
Yeah,
Like
his
his
signature.
hand signature. And what is this doing in a jewelry store?
What is this doing outside of his office?
I don't think I've ever heard of anybody reading his book.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like. I could have sworn, um, I keep forgetting. Espelon tried to get them off the market.
So then I think like this is where we hear like the sort of like shuffling or like tinkling of glass, right?
Hmm.
As
Yes.
somebody is kind of sneaking up on us. Uh, what is like the sinister, like this is like someone we're seeing from behind, like the shot has us framed like our two heads are behind this other person's turned head or whatever.
Right.
What's this like sinister parting sentence before we like cut to stay tuned or whatever?
Um. Hmm. like my, more mouse in my trap. Or more mice in my trap.
Stay tuned to find out who the sinister leader of the anti-magic hate group is. Right?
Yes.
Cool. All right.
Poor girls.
Do you think that's are you satisfied with that ending here? I know it's a
Yeah.
little bit earlier.
Yeah, I think like, because it's not like they have a chance to get it's not like complete utter failure, It's like
Mhm.
just more intrigue
Good
and
deal.
everything.
Okay. So we can debrief here. So like our debrief procedure is usually kind of about like sharing feedback from the session and kind of just like winding down afterwards to kind of sit down here. So um I should probably have more questions to bring to the table here since I'm supposed to be helping run a panel on debrief. But I'm still learning myself about good techniques for that, so
Mhm.
that's going to be my part in that discussion. But I definitely know like some questions I have um, about our experience, to get some feedback. But like, first, I kind of want to check in and see like how you felt about it.
I really liked it. I think it was like you said, it was a nice like starting setup. Um and it's definitely like even though we didn't do too much magic, there was definitely a lot of like possibilities there and everything. So I like the idea that it's not 100%, at least for this session, it wasn't like 100% focus on the magic, but like more of the inner, like the world, a little bit of the world building and more of like the interpersonal play.
Right. Yeah, I liked some of the ideas that we came up with, and I especially appreciated the drive towards being more inclusive, of an experience, and
Mhm.
thinking about that in terms of like names and people that we're bringing into play, um, and also like just the themes of the story. I was really grateful for your voice and perspective on that. I think it really enriched the game. Uh, so like just for this session in particular though, right? Like I had a lot of fun and it was really fun collaborating with you. I think
Yeah,
I always want give you a star for doing a great job.
thank you.
It's hard one on one, sometimes you kind of have to like bring a lot to the table and pull a lot out of nothing. So
Yeah. And it's also nice to like because as you stated in your introduction, like you're a cishet white person to be not defensive, like and it's a natural response to be a little defensive, when bringing up like, oh, like all games are like this way, and it's like so it's nice to like to be open and understanding and everything because I know for a lot of like other people of color that's where they get a little nervous in tabletop space
hmm.
is because it is mostly generated by or dominated by like cishet white people. And so it's like, well, do I feel comfortable mentioning like, Trump or like it's like and you brought up like, oh, was there a police problem knowing that we have a police problem. So it makes it more comfortable for us to be natural, and being able to bring it up. And it's totally like understandable, like if you didn't want to like have it focused on real world, like makes sense. A lot of people just want to have a fantasy where we don't have to think about, the real world stuff. But I like my personal goal has been like if I can in every RPG that I play, bring some part of my Latinx culture or experience into even if it's just like even if we're playing like, a Japanese RPG, then it'll be I can't have a Japanese name, but maybe there'll be some inference, kind of thing.
Hmm.
So it's fun for something like this to like be able to insert little aspects in this and it's just like the default.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that you were able to kind of play in that space because My culture is all over everything in terms of tabletop games, like you said, right? So I
Mm.
don't have to worry that like my culture is going to be represented because it usually is without fail. So I'm glad that we were able to create a space where you're able to experience that. Uh, yeah, and I think that if I was to like, if either of us were to collaborate on this game further, that would be one of my huge goals too. Is that this could be a fantasy for people to uh, feel comfortable in,
Yeah, for sure.
but also like explores maybe some real life things. So cool. Um, how about this? What was like from this game that we made, with like maybe like four details. What was something about the game that you really liked that like you might would like to see developed in the future, or even adapted into more games?
Mm. I'm just looking at the document to remind myself since it was a lot of information. Uh, because I liked a lot of it. Um, I guess I really did like us taking on the roles of the teacher depending on who chose the scene. So, so for that GM list aspect, um, it was a little like, what's the word? Like, I was a little nervous about it. I was like, "Oh, crap," because 'cause I'm not like I said, I had a chance to GM in a really long time, so I'm not used to yet doing on the fly. But what helps is, well, everyone has to be on the fly. So it's not like you're expected to, like, already know, like, how you're gonna present the scene and everything. And I did like the idea of, like, how we decided the dice rolls, like, the tags would get you to add more dice, without it being too obviously, as we saw, it wasn't overpowering at all. It really didn't give
Yeah,
us that huge
unfortunately.
of an advantage.
Maybe we should change this rule.
But that's something that could be developed further, obviously. And if we had a full, like, character sheet, obviously, we'd have more ideas of what to modify.
Yeah, I find myself often like falling back on these sort of like tried and true PBTA mechanisms, and it's not necessarily a bad thing because hey, we were able to come up with like a cool conflict resolution mechanic like in a short amount of time.
Mhm.
But also like I'm always interested when people are innovating new ways to sort of work with that.
Right.
But I was glad to have it at least for today, right?
For sure, definitely.
So like just quick side note, like I know you'd mentioned that uh you played like Primetime Adventures and you're kind of getting into role playing games again. Like, what have you been playing lately that's been exciting you?
Um,
And maybe like what are you like more familiar with also?
I'm technically familiar with D&D, but, like, I think what I played in high school was, like, uh, 2nd edition or something, and I'm now playing 5th edition. Um, and I knew back in the day the White Wolf games, not very well, but, like, I played a few of them. But, like, the RPG stream that I do on Sundays, is all about doing, like, indie RPs, and so once we
Mhm.
finish, like, what's the word? A campaign, we try something else. So we're currently doing Ryutama, which
Ooh,
is if you like it's the adventuring it's like the traveling you do in Final Fantasy games, but it's just the traveling is the whole RP. So you have to, like, roll for, like, constitution, roll if you made a good campsite.
right.
But it also has to do with dragons, and so it's really neat because I'm playing a character who, is traveling to the new world as a chef. So
Ooh.
the dynamic, like, I've been bringing this up a lot lately everywhere, is we had to fight a dragon recently, a wild dragon, and the bard and the hunter, types went after the dragon, even though this dragon's totally huge. And I'm like, "I'm a chef. What in my right mind would I go do? I don't have a bow. If I had a bow, maybe.
Right.
And so based on what the GM like what I rolled for like knowledge and stuff, I realized we encroached on the dragon's territory. I'm a chef. What's the best way to make apologies? And as a Latina person, make food.
Yeah.
Like fill them up. So and I rolled really well, and we despite the fact that the bard and the hunter were almost like half dead because they were like doing poorly. Well, the bard was hiding. The hunter was trying to get his spear out of the dragon.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
and I present this food of like, carne asada and tamales and everything. I was like, please forgive us. We don't mean any harm. And the dragon was like, oh, well, do you have enough for my children? And then that was the end of the conflict. So that was like,
Nice.
really fun to do. And then in the D&D game that I do right now, which is a podcast, is a lot of character drama. Like there's still some like, fighting, but there's a lot of interpersonal character drama. And it's because our GM is really good at taking our backstories and like making
Hmm.
all these little twists and everything. And
Hmm.
so that's been really fun. And everything.
I think you might have said the name of you
Hold on one second.
because I want to check that out.
Yeah. It's on SoundCloud and why SoundCloud? The name of like the RPG, I guess, campaign of it is called Illuminus. Um, but it's part of the GM's Deeper in the Game podcast, so I'll link the playlist. So that's for the D&D one, and then for Ryutama, we have a Twitter account, I think it's either the Reclaimers RPG or Reclaimers RPG, and we actually play on I Need Diverse Games Twitch account.
Okay,
'Cause
I think I follow that account on Twitter.
yeah, like
Diverse GMs, I think is the handle, right?
yeah, so and that's by Tanya DePass, and, so yeah, she wanted to ensure that there was since tabletop RPG and streaming has become more popular,
Hmm.
she wanted to be like, "Hey, there's a lot of people of color playing," And so the
Let's let people
Reclaimers
see them.
yeah, yeah, so the Reclaimers is RPG is all people of color, and some of us are queer and everything, and that's the Sunday show, but I'll link in the group chat. This is the podcast. And yeah, so Sundays on twitch.tv/INDG from 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time is when we have right now we're working on Ryutama. I think we probably still have like 3 or 4 sessions of that left before we start up a new game type. We've done Tenra Bancho Zero and Primetime Adventures and Ryutama now on that one.
Cool. So all the Japanese exports
Oh,
then.
I did link it right. Yeah. Tenra was crazy. That was fun.
Yeah, that's like
That
more action based, right?
yeah, it's more action based. It's geared towards like I guess shorter sessions because you superpower level up and everything. But yeah, the GM is very evil, and I'll forever blame the GM for having my character murder uh, a church full of orphans.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty dire.
Yeah, and that was in the first the first official session because we had like 0 sessions and everything.
Right,
But
right, right.
yeah.
Dang, so right off the bat, huh? Man,
Oh yeah.
it's
But
intense.
it but yeah, so it's been really great.
But it's been great.
But yeah,
I'll make sure to
feelings.
I'll stick that in my podcatcher then, and I'll keep an eye out for those streams then because those sound super cool.
Awesome, yeah.
Uh,
And
yeah.
I'm doing a couple more RPGs for Gauntlet Con. Whatchamacallit? No, Huddle, I'm doing one of the play tests, I think tomorrow, which is gonna be kickstarted soon, and that's gonna be a Mexican supernatural RPG.
That game looks so good. The art is like crazy killer too.
Yeah, I'm excited I was able to get into one of one of the play tests for it. I'm like,
I
yes.
think I was signed up for one of those. I might have had to drop out to do help desk, but I'll have to double check because I still haven't had a chance to play with Miguel yet. So, uh, cool. Well, again, Diana, it was awesome meeting you, and it was super great to collaborate with you on this game.
Yeah, it was
Uh,
great.
which as of yet unnamed, but I think is ripe for further development. So I think we'll call it good here, and we'll end our broadcast.
Okay. Thank you.